second-degree murder, aggravated abuse, battery, cruel treatment. These are just some of the crimes committed by the guards over at the Miami-Dade County Jail. In the 7th largest county jail in the United States are 4,000 inmates spread across 6 detention facilities facing brutality, overcrowding, inadequate protection, and improper medical and mental care. In the next 5 to 10 minutes, you'll realize what it's like to be locked up inside Miami-Dade County Jail. The Miami-Dade Corrections and Rehabilitation Department is home to pretrial detainees and convicts spread over 7 different facilities. Still, we'll focus on these 3, because that's where most of the action is. Out of the 4,000 to 4,200 inmates, the Metro West Detention Center has the highest population, about 2,332 inmates. And after their intake and booking process, the classification unit assesses those that are mentally ill, have a medical condition or conditions, are child sex offenders, are suicide risk, escape risk, are disabled, which require special housing, protective custody, etc., and then house them accordingly. The jail has made quite a name for itself in the past, which we'll get to later, but as a former detainee once said, quote, "It's just a drop in the ocean of what really goes down in there." Let's now dive into the inmate stories to get up close to the real issue at hand. This is Ishmael Allendez, who was arrested on October of 2022 on a misdemeanor battery charge. To enter the Metro West Detention Center, he had to go through a contraband search, which required him to give his garments to the guards and get fully strip searched. He was ordered to squat as part of the search, to which he explained to them that he has a problem and, quote, "can't really squat." Instead of catering to his conditions, the guards just went off on him and started beating him up. In the complaint that Allendez filed, he claimed that the alleged officers even pepper sprayed him, injured his knee, and left him there with blurry vision. The entire investigation took place in secrecy, and only this man dared to talk to NBC6 channel, which led us to this story. Before Allendez's story, there was Luigi Cruz, who spent 60 days in custody for allegedly violating probation months after he was convicted of DUI and child neglect. On the 26th of August 2019, there was a scheduled sweater exchange in his unit, the same as Allendez. According to him, quote, he, prison guard, said, "Everybody shut the f*** up, get in line." So I look back and everybody's in line. So I'm like, "Who are you talking to?" And he's just like, "Shut the f*** up and get in line." And I thought, who are you talking to again? After that, he launched a punch. In his complaint, Cruz described the brutal beating, writing that, quote, "I gave my arms up and I counted 23 blows in total while handcuffed." He told NBC6 that the blows to the head and to the neck continued, and they did not stop. Not only was this a shameful display of injustice, but the most ridiculous thing from this incident is the officer's report. Keep in mind that Cruz had 2 witnesses who provided statements supporting Cruz's story. Officer Lumpkin's report stated that he was, quote, "conducting a shakedown," and that Cruz was being disrespectful. It also said that he didn't comply, and that he, quote, "took a defensive and aggressive stance," as if Cruz was about to engage in a physical altercation. In February of 2022, Ronald Gene Ingram, age 60, was serving time in the mental health unit, and he was set to be transferred to the Lake Correctional Institute upstate. As he was getting removed from his cell, he threw urine on one officer, to which the 4 officers, Ronald Connor, Christopher Rowland, Jeremy Godbolt, and Kirk Walton, handcuffed the inmate, removed him from the cell, and began to beat him. He was then placed inside a secure compartment by himself in a van. And according to the news release from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, quote, "On the way to Lake CI, the van made a stop in Ocala, where the inmate was found deceased, laying on a bench inside the van. The medical examiner determined the death was caused by a punctured lung leading to internal bleeding. In addition, the inmate had injuries to his face and torso consistent with a beating." The fact that he was picked up from the mental unit and that he was 60 meant nothing to these 3. Which is why they were taken into custody on charges of second-degree murder, aggravated abuse of an elderly or disabled adult, and battery/cruel treatment. The 4th guard, Jeremy, was at large till almost 10 weeks after the death, when he was found, arrested, and charged with murder as well. According to the MDCR reports, use of force incidents have nearly doubled since 2019. An MDCR spokesperson shared that an average of 60% of the use of force incidents involves staff trying to break up inmate fights, noting over half of the inmates have a diagnosis of mental illness. There have been various court cases against this prison for violation of the inmates' 8th and 4th Amendment rights, prisoner-on-prisoner assaults, and unconstitutional conditions that resulted in death, disease, or suicide. Let's now dive into those inmates' stories that had to face unsanitary conditions in the most unsafe time of all, the COVID-19 pandemic. Charles Hobbs was arrested in January of 2020 for an unknown reason. But what we do know is one of his past crimes was failure to register as a sex offender in 2007 and 2014. Back when he had temporarily moved in with a girlfriend, he forgot to notify the county where she lived. When the COVID-19 pandemic began to sweep the country, a judge ordered his release from jail and placed him in confinement, given his multiple underlying conditions of congenital heart failure, kidney failure, and hypertension. But because of, quote, unknown reasons, he was never granted a release. Instead, he caught the virus around April and his condition started to worsen. His fellow prisoner one day found him unconscious, and he was revived and transferred to another cell with other prisoners who had tested positive for COVID-19. It was only a matter of time before he got sicker and ultimately died alone in the Miami hospital. Meanwhile, while Hobbs suffered and died, his family was never told that he was sick. His relatives weren't even contacted about the shift to another cell, nor when he was again found convulsing in his bed and taken to a hospital. His family had to learn about the fact that he had contracted COVID from a consortium of advocacy groups who were investigating a lawsuit on behalf of other prisoners in Miami jails. In 2020, the United States District Court released a 53-page decision, which, other than instructing to follow CDC guidelines, revealed a very grim reality behind the prison walls, especially during COVID-19. The plaintiff's evidence revealed the bunk beds are about 2 to 2.5 feet apart. One bathroom is shared among 60 guys, and overcrowded tables during mealtimes mean people have to eat anywhere they can. Also, during their mandatory recreation time, they're forced to mingle with people who were put in quarantine cells. One person welcomed a guy who was moved out of his cell after finding out that his inmates had COVID-19. He also took the test and was waiting for the results next to this person. He left after a day and a half after his test results came back, and he learned that he was COVID-19 positive as well. In the case of masks, inmates received masks about every 7 days, and most of them broke within 2 to 3 days. Now, in case the inmate broke his mask accidentally, he had to wait for a whole week for a new one. In March of 2020, attorney Maya Ragsdale visited the Metro West Detention Center and shared that, quote, "Not one of the guards I saw was wearing gloves or masks. I saw doctors, nurses, guards, and cops coming in and out of the jail freely, without additional screening measures in sight." Even though the Miami-Dade County Jail closed down one of its facilities in 2016, it continues to be a pinnacle of ill treatment, the hub spot for diseases, and the cause of death for many inmates. Despite the lawsuits and the public outcry, this jail continues to rack up a higher injustice count than many other jails out there. Thanks for watching.